Lunar Awakening by Sarissa Van Bibber. Thanks. This book is dedicated to my mother, who helped cultivate my creativity and passion for writing. Thank you for helping me overcome my dyslexia, for teaching me how to read and write, and for all those hours you spent reading to me. I will never forget your kindness and dedication to helping me succeed. I love you more than I say. Thank you. Chapter 1 Hard Beginnings. Arafu, a peaceful country in the continent of Lud, a multicultural continent with vast terrain. Arafu is a country with the dragon spine, where it is said that a giant, ancient dragon skeleton is overgrown by nature to make mountains and valleys. The largest of the mountains is fabled to be the head of the dragon, called Mount Tsukismo. Arafu is in the middle of the continent and has a long, rich history of being the country that cultivates magic. The continent's greatest magical minds and practitioners usually come from Arafu. This blessing of magic is attributed to the moon goddess, one of the many gods the continent worships. Arafu is widely known as a mostly pacifist country, firmly believing in peace, cooperation, and respect. This deep cultural belief is a primary code for their society, except for the continent's most aggressive neighbor, Helthaven. Helthaven is the continent's most military minded country and is a home to its most strategic minds. Tales say that Helthaven's leaders were barren of magic and jealous of the Arafian people. Other countries of Lud include the elven nation of Elrin, which has bountiful trees that produce many fruits. The elves are great hunters and can track a man for days. The country of Tepli consists of boundless plains and is known for its agriculture. They are home to the largest men and women, most towering above the rest of the continent's population. And then there's the desert land of Turuk. There are tales that deep within the desert, an ancient castle has a crystal that allows the bearer to talk with the gods. Mommy, look what I found! Tsuki, the young princess of Arafu, called out as she ran towards her mother, standing in the inner garden with the young king's adviser, Takagi. She was running down a corridor to the green space with a very perturbed frog in her hands. Kuze, Tsuki's mother, smiled and giggled as her daughter ran up to her with the angry amphibian, trying to wiggle free from Tsuki's tight grip on its body. Her long brown hair was pulled into a loose bun with golden accessories. Her dark skin glistened in the midday sun above. She was originally from the country of Turuk, and an esteemed adviser who happened to fall in love with the quirky young king of Arafu, who wooed her upon their meeting. Sweetie, why don't we put him in the pond? That way he has a place to stay. Excellent idea, your majesty. Takagi, the king's adviser and court wizard, stepped up and took the frog from Tsuki while handing his handkerchief to Kuze so she could clean Tsuki's hands. Takagi wore a simple dark gray attire and his long blue hair in a ponytail. The young wizard was the apprentice of the former court wizard, who died a few years prior, leaving Takagi to learn as he went. Takagi did his best to honor his late mentor and do the job before him properly, but he made mistakes occasionally. As Kuze cleaned her daughter's hands, she asked Tsuki, "And what do we say to those who help us?" "Oh, thank you, Takagi!" Tsuki cheered. Kuze cleared her throat softly. "I mean, teacher," Tsuki corrected, speaking softly. After cleaning his hands in the water, Takagi ruffled Tsuki's silver hair and said, "Thank you, little one." Tsuki beamed up at the nickname he had given her. After a moment of comfortable silence, a call came from one of the many corridors leading to the garden. My loves! Cried Tsuki's father. His grandparents named him Stefan. He continually surpassed everyone's expectations. He was a great leader. My liege, Takagi said as he bowed. Tsuki's father laughed as he approached. Rise, dear friend, the king commented to Takagi. I'm glad all of you are having a good afternoon. Dad! Tsuki exclaimed as she ran to her father. Found a froggy! Oh, said Tsuki's dad, chuckling. My love, he addressed his wife, you are needed in the council room. Shall I follow you? Asked Tsuki's mother. Her father nodded. He ruffled Tsuki's hair and said, Please stay with Takagi, my dear. She nodded as she knew her father and mother were essential and needed to go to the council who needed guidance. Daddy, have a good meeting, she exclaimed, waving her parents goodbye. Takagi cleared his throat as the two turned a corner. Now, what shall we do? Huh? Tsuki questioned. Takagi squatted to Tsuki's eye level. We could have a history lesson, or review other countries. Tsuki groaned and put her head in her hands. But that stuff is boring. It's about to be my birthday. Why can't we have fun? Takagi chuckled. My job is to teach and guide you. If I let you slack off too often, I wouldn't be doing my job. Tsuki gave her mentor a skeptical look. I'm 5. Ah, almost 5. Now, where shall I begin? Takagi said as he sat on a nearby bench. Tsuki moaned as she stomped over to the wizard. Oh, I know. Since your 5th birthday is tomorrow, why don't we talk about spirit power in the ceremony? The young man said excitedly. Now, if you remember from my previous lectures, the pure water that flows from Mount Tsukismo, which you were named after, has magical properties. It allows those descendants of the moon goddess to obtain and use power that matches the person using it. This power comes from the user's spirit. I already heard all this, Tsuki mumbled, but not softly enough for Takagi not to hear. Takagi raised an eyebrow and continued. This power manifests as an animal. For example, my spirit animal is a hawk, and because of this I can use the attributes of my animal. I can use my spirit power to turn into a hawk, or I can have hawk-like sight, just to name a few. Tell me what the ceremony is like, Tsuki burst out. Takagi glared at the child next to him. Even though she was a royal, Tsuki was just like any other child her age. Ahem. Oh, can you tell me about the ceremony, please? Tsuki asked softly. Takagi gave a pleased smile and nodded. The ceremony has the child being anointed at the edge of the water that flows directly from Mount Tsukismo. An esteemed elder tells the child to go into the water up to their chest and look into it. Then the child will see an animal. Of course, the elder will see it too, so there's no mistake about what animal the child's spirit power is. And that's it. The child will come out of the water and dry off while the elder announces the animal. Then we feast. Tsuki jumped up and yelled, Food! Yay! Very next day was the young princess's 5th birthday. Tsuki's special day was supposed to be perfect. The 5th year of an Arafian's life was when they found their spirit power, cause for celebration. But what unfolded was no less than a tragedy. As the young king and queen guided Tsuki through the forest to the choosing waters, events rapidly unfolded that toppled her world. Father was the youngest of 2 boys. He had passed his older brother for the throne because of his prowess in strategy and in fighting. Her mother was a diplomat from a foreign land at peace with Tsuki's. Tsuki's father wore his customary military outfit. He had a deep blue jacket with golden shoulder pads and tassels. Tsuki always loved playing with those, and the many medals her father wore on his chest. Even though he was only in his mid-30s, her father had hints of gray in his usual black. This was because of the demanding duties of being a good king. He also sported a bushy mustache. His eyes were thinner than her mother's, but just like Tsuki's. Tsuki had silver hair that fell a little past her shoulders. She had slitted eyes like her father, but they were light blue. She was a bit pudgy and short for a 5-year-old, but she was nonetheless healthy. Her light olive skin glowed in any light. She wore a white dress with short sleeves that reached her shins. She also wore white sandals and a crown of daisies on her head. As they walked, her parents discussed whether she would take after them or have a different path. Tsuki looked at her father to ask a question and saw a feather falling from the sky. As it floated towards the ground, Tsuki bumped into her father's arm. It was an abrupt stop, which startled her. Looking forward, Tsuki saw a man dressed in black, holding a very long blade, longer than her father's, which he always kept by his side. It was the sword of the king, after all. "Daddy?" Tsuki whispered as she stared at the man in black. "Stay back, sweetheart," her father commanded. Suddenly, the man started towards the three at a brisk pace. Tsuki's father pulled his sword, but not quickly enough. He was run through by the man's blade. Blood sprang Tsuki as she took cover behind her father. At first she thought it was raining, but it was too warm. Then she saw blood dripping from the tip of the sword embedded in her father. Her mother screamed while her father dropped his own blade. Her mother rushed the man, holding a knife in her hands. The man pulled his sword from his first target and swung at Tsuki's mother. The next thing Tsuki saw was her mother standing there, with no head on her shoulders and blood spraying everywhere. Tsuki stumbled backward and fell, looking at her feet only to find her mother's head looking at her. Tsuki tried to scream, but nothing came out. Then the man in black pulled his hood and stared at Tsuki, tears in his green eyes. "I don't want to kill you, but if I don't, he'll kill my family," the man said as he slowly walked towards the frail little girl. As he came closer, Tsuki saw a purple snake head on his hand that was holding his sword. Tsuki felt something in the grass and grabbed it out of reflex. It was her father's sword. She barely blocked a killing blow. It deflected off. The man's sword cut deep into the flesh vertically on Tsuki's left eye. The wound was wide and long and gushed blood. Tsuki then scrambled away, trying to get into the trees that surrounded the path, but not before the man swung twice, cutting deep within the flesh on her back. "I'm going to kill you, so there's no use in running," the man said as he lunged again. The whole world seemed to freeze, silent and still. Suddenly a force awakened within Tsuki, a power she did not know she had. She closed her eyes because it hurt. Something burst forth from the cuts on her back, and she felt them move. It was warm. Instinctively she moved them and was quickly lifted off the ground. As she opened her eyes, expecting to feel the cutting of a blade in her, she found that she was above the man. She was flying. Tsuki looked around her, expecting to find someone above with a weak guardian that could fly, but all she saw were wings. One of a dove and the other of a bat. She didn't know what had happened, but as she looked down at the now enraged man, she didn't care. All she knew was that she could get away. So, with her father's sword in hand, Tsuki took off in a random direction and flew as far as she could to get away, wondering if the man could fly by magic or not. She flew for quite some time until her body gave out. She had been existing on pure fear and adrenaline. And when that gave out, she fell from the sky. Thankfully, several trees broke her fall. When Tsuki awoke, she expected it all to have been a bad dream. She thought she would wake up on her 5th birthday. Her mother and father would be beside her. Instead, she could see the inside of a dim, dank hut made of straw and wood. She was in a tremendous pain, and that's how she knew it wasn't a dream. "Oh, you're awake," said the man from across the hut. She knew it wasn't the man who attacked her or her parents because his voice was different. It was deeper and smoother. "How do you feel?" the man asked. "I hurt," Tsuki said with tears in her eyes. Even though she was very grown up for her age, she still reverted to simple things like crying when injured. "I know. I'm sorry," he cooed soothingly. Tsuki then looked down to see a bite mark on her wrist. She didn't remember what happened in the incident with the dark figure. She looked questioningly at the man who was at her side. "To save you, I had to turn you into one of my kind, a werewolf. You would have died if I hadn't given you rapid healing abilities. It seems to have had an adverse effect on you," the man said softly. What?" Tsuki asked as she tried to sit up. Her throat was dry. She needed water. When she realized she could not, she laid back down and motioned to the man that she needed water. "Oh, yes, of course." He eagerly stood up from his chair and walked to a table. Now Tsuki could see that the man was tall, like a tree. He had dark brown hair with strange dog ears and a flowing tail to match the color of his hair on his head. The man also had a big, full beard and a mustache that he kept running his hand through. He wore a red shirt that was open at the front. He also had hair on his chest, just like Tsuki's father. From what Tsuki saw, he was also barefoot. He was just like the werewolves in her mom's stories, hairy all over with an imposing aura, wolf ears on his head, and a fluffy tail. He brought over a wooden cup and helped Tsuki drink from it. As she finished drinking, Tsuki asked, "Where am I? And where are my parents?" The man breathed deeply and said, "You're in my home, deep within the great Arafian forest. I don't know where your parents are. You fell from the sky and crashed into a lot of trees. My son Kiryu found you. After I turned you, I helped heal your wounds. They may take some time to fully heal, though." Then Tsuki saw a little boy around her age with silver hair, wolf ears, and a tail to match. "So it really happened?" Tsuki said as she began to cry again. "What happened, little one?" the man asked. Tsuki then recounted the horrific tale to the man. She wished the story was not true and had just been a nightmare. But it wasn't a dream. It was real, and she had to face that fact when she told the man what had happened. "And all of that happened yesterday? My word," said the werewolf man. "No wonder you were so close to death. I'm glad we found you." The little boy named Kiryuk now stood at his side, hesitant to speak as he was timid. "You were really hurt. I'm glad you're with us now," Kiryuk said as he tentatively walked forward. And that was the start of a new life for Tsuki. She spent 7 years with them, learning to hunt and control her new werewolf powers. At the time, Tsuki thought about her wings she had grown, but soon forgot about them as she focused on mastering her werewolf powers.